Okay guys, welcome to the fourth instalment of the Learning Beyond Lectures EdTech Talks, the student-led podcast in DCU, led by the fantastic pioneering final year DBO students, the first of our kind. Our topic today is about health and fitness in terms of technology and how it's applied. We want to take a different look at it, and we went for before you do your running and stuff. How do we get to optimum performance? And we want to look at sleep to set the foundation for fitness and your best health. For this, we've had to call in the big guns. The cavalry are here today. So beside me here is a man with over a decade experience in sleep coaching. So everyone, this is Tom Coleman. Hi Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Tom, sleep coaching it's a bit of an odd one. Not the most normal profession. How did you get yourself into this profession? Give me a bit of a background.
Okay, yeah, it is a bit of an odd one, all right. So how it happened, I qualified about 16 years ago as a health scientist. So I was very curious about how things worked. When I left college, I got into nutrition. Food nutrition was the magic bullet at that time. And I got to work with high-level athletes. So we're talking about maybe people who were on the Irish rugby team, people like that, people performing at a very high level. And I realised quickly recovery was the key, right? So what had the biggest impact on recovery? That was the question. And the answer came back, surprisingly, is sleep. And that was about 10 years ago. So I kind of became obsessed with sleep. I contacted a company in the US called Fatigue Science. And they were using technology to analyse sleep and correlate it with mental fatigue and physical fatigue. And I got to work with that very high-end tech years ago, and I got to analyse the sleep patterns and habits of elite-level athletes. And I've been working in sleep ever since. It's been 10 years now in sleep.
And so this technology is from the US. Was this commercial product, or was it more private application?
Private application. It was initially designed for fighter pilots. So the US military invested heavily in this tech. And I mean, they can afford the fighter jet for 40 million, but it takes 10 years to train a man, to train a pilot or a woman. So they didn't want to lose the pilot. And they knew obviously that sleep and mental fatigue, there was a correlation there. So that tech was initially designed for the fighter pilot, and they would be sent home if their score was less than 85%. They wouldn't be allowed to work. And the only cure for mental fatigue is sleep. So I was then privy to a lot of documentation from the Walter Reed Institute on the military's approach to sleep, and even some of the technology that they're looking at developing, which is kind of scary. It's kind of trying to initialize sleep through technology. So it's fascinating stuff.
And when we're looking at measuring that sleep and the mental fatigue, what kind of variables are going into this? Is it the length of it, or is it more so the quality of the sleep you're receiving?
So when I would work with anyone with sleep, generally, we tend to get very zoned in on last night and tonight. We talk about sleep quality, and people talk about sleep quality. There's about 7 different variables there in that word alone, sleep quality. So how do we set that? Sleep regularity. Am I going to bed at the same time? Am I getting up at the same time? Sleep duration. Sleep latency. How long does it take you to get to sleep? The depth in which you go. How long you're in that deeper level of sleep. And look, there is incredible value in light sleep as well. Let's not underestimate. Both are equally important. The tech I had would analyse about 10 different variables and then crunch that data, and it needed 3 days worth of data to get a baseline level. Once you had a baseline level, then it could kind of go forward with that. But the money was in the algorithm.
So in terms of kind of commercial sleep products and fitness wearables and things like that, how do they compare to this Air Force technology, and is there a difference between them?
Yeah, so a very good point, very good question. We're obsessed now with wearable tech. This technology I had is not open to the public still. It's only open to people who are working in very high-risk environments, such as soldiers, such as maybe crane drivers, and things like that. It's not available to the public. The difference between them. So there's a principle in science called VARC. Okay, so validity is a measure of accuracy and reliability is a measure of consistency. How do I know that the information, the data I'm getting is accurate and consistent? it has to be calibrated against something. And the gold standard measurement for sleep is polysomnography. So I knew that this tech was validated against the gold standard it was about 94% accurate. So just to give you a comparison, so if we talk about the Whoops and the Fitbits and the other wearable tech that we get, they're accurate at telling you if you're awake or asleep, about 90%, okay? Pretty good. That accuracy level drops down to about 50, 60% when it comes to analysing deeper level data, REM sleep versus deep sleep. And so, look, I mean, what did the guy say in the movie? 60% of the time, it works every time. So not very accurate. And I don't want people to become obsessed with the information that they're getting. Now, it is improving all the time. That's another thing to say.
Yeah, so I suppose we wouldn't say write off the Whoops and the Fitbits,
No.
but be aware of the fact that they're not 100%.
I think it depends on the personality type. I've used them. I'm a fan of them. You know, they serve a purpose. It's are we using them correctly, or are we allowing them to ruin our day? And if you're a type A personality, like I know, like I've encountered these people who are like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to see if they're hitting their sleep targets. You know, I mean, you need to back away. So I would say, and I tell people, focus on all of the other stuff, and the sleep will look after itself. Because you said at the beginning, I'm a sleep coach, right? So I don't go into the bedroom at night going, you're doing a great job there, more REM sleep, right? What I do is I look at someone's day and I ask them a ton of questions, and I get them to make small changes in all these different variables. And then over time, the sleep comes right. The sleep comes right over weeks usually.
I see. So I know you've done some work with Irish rugby players as well.
That's right. With any elite athlete, what I love about working with them is like they tend to do what you say. Yeah. Whereas like members of the public will be like, no, I mean, they'll come to me with like sleep issues, and they'll have lifestyle choice issues. They'll have boundary issues. They won't want to stop leading their stressful life, drinking 10 cups of coffee with 2 jobs, a laptop, and scrolling on like to switch off, right? Whereas elite athletes will listen, take it on board, analyze it, and do it. And that's what I like about working with elite athletes. A lot of them tend to be OCD, tend to be a little bit like, show me the process, tell me what to do, and I'll get this result. And, you know, that's what I liked about working with those guys. The rugby guys were gentle giants. Like most of them were like 6'6", huge men. And I'd be talking to them about like, you know, getting their bedroom right, or listening to something at night, or a meditation. But honestly, they took it all on board. They were fantastic to work with, really were.
And I know you've done a study in partnership with Des Kelly using 5 different athletes. So was there much of a variance in how you approached each athlete, kind of based on the results you were receiving?
Yeah, I mean, they have particular challenges. Sleep is a very personal thing. I mean, if I'm analysing your activity and I've got access to that 24/7, I can see if you've been up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, right? I can see that. You say, well, what's happening here, you know? So people, you know, so you have to respect that very much so, you know. People have very particular challenges. Sleep is it could be tech, it could be stress, it could be anxiety, it could be children. It could be eating at their own time. It's like there's so many variables that go into it. So each person is different, each personality is different, and each challenge. So I had a retired rugby player, Ronan. He's 100 caps for Munster. So like his challenge was pain, you know, and he had young children in his life. Yeah. So I had another guy who was like a world mountain bike champion, you know, and he was like sleeping in the back of a van sometimes, and traveling maybe was his issue. So I think it's a broad area with specialized knowledge, so you have to be ready for that. And I'm a scientist. I want to measure, then implement, and then measure again. So like, is it working? Is what I've done, is that really working?
So that's kind of reinforcing, I suppose, biology over psychology then, in terms of how to measure sleep. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I'm a fan of mechanism. I'm a fan of show me a process that works. No, it's not always as simple as that, because we're humans, and there's complexities, there's layers and layers in it. Sleep is complex, as I said. There are many layers in it, but I like to understand the biology. I don't want someone telling me, "Oh, this is good. Show me the research and let me analyze that research," because that's part of my degree background, is understanding research. So much of what's put out there that's maybe not accurate is misinterpretation of the data. And so my job as a health scientist is to interpret and then communicate that. And I have to understand mechanism. So what that does then is it gives me great belief, and not more than belief, knowledge that it will work. If you do what I tell you, it will work.
And obviously you mentioned earlier that the athletes were probably the easiest to work with in terms of their regimen, their schedule. So when you did do kind of programs with other companies, I know like eBay and things like that, were they a bit longer on average and probably harder to get the subjects to adopt the techniques you were implementing?
Again, I was a fan of kind of understanding that what I was doing would work. So what we done was we used a validated sleep measurement tool. It's called the PSQI index, Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, because I could randomly ask them questions, but there's no validity in that. So again, I was back to the science, going, right, here's a tool that's validated. So we had to develop a system of anonymity within this, that they could actually answer all those questions anonymously, and then the same person could answer them all after the intervention. So again, and then that gave me very solid data after. So very different. Some people will adapt much easier. Some people tend to focus on, so I worked with day workers and night shift workers. And sometimes they can get very sucked into the things they can't control, like the shift. Oh, it's the shift, that's the issue. Well, that's not going to change unless you move your job. So I try and get people to focus on what they can control and take action, not just lie in bed and think about it. Worry about it. We've all been there, right? You cannot think your way into better living. You have to live your way into better thinking.
So in terms of, say, someone that's on shift, we're kind of swapping in between days and nights. Obviously, they're not going to be sleeping at the same time every day. So how would you kind of recommend a plan to them in terms of improving their sleep and their performance?
Yeah. So what they have to do, they have to find the rhythm within that shift pattern. In terms of, like, if they're switching over between days and nights, that's going to be highly disruptive to their body clock, to their circadian rhythm. It's every function. It's not just your sleep. Your circadian rhythm governs everything about your biology. So it's like that's going to be disrupted. And the fastest way, I teach them how to realign quickly using the physical components of sleep, like light, food, habits, cueing control, temperature. All of those are absolutely key. And teach them about sleep cycles, 90-minute sleep cycles. So when they're transitioning from nights back to days, they don't wake themselves up in the middle of a cycle. They plan their sleeps and they find a strategy that works for them.
And is there kind of certain little technologies or even things around the place that you could have to improve that quality? I know you mentioned lights there and things like that.
Absolutely. So like light is the master switch when it comes to sleep. So I would advise them to get a light box. We have receptors in the back of our retina that pick up different light frequencies, and then that aligns the supercomputer in your brain, the master timer. So it's part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It needs the information from light. So if you're not getting it, it's dark into winter now. That's one of the fastest ways to realign. So use the light box. There's apps there to help you wind down. There's apps there that will track your circadian rhythm, that will help you, that will inform you. There's lots of technologies there that are very useful in terms of realigning and informing and protecting.
So obviously, as a final year college student, we probably have the most random sleep schedule, I'd say, working late into the night, going out late into the night as well. So I suppose, how should we go about, improving our sleep? I know it's more of an individual process, but take someone that's kind of up for long times in the day, kind of up at 8 or 9 and awake until, say, 2 in the morning, not getting an awful lot of hours of sleep, say 5-6 hours. What would your advice be in that situation?
Okay, so there's a couple of things there we'll deconstruct. So the first thing is how we work, how we operate. So I mentioned circadian rhythm, I mentioned 90-minute sleep cycles. Everything works in pulses and cycles in life, in nature. The 90-minute sleep cycle is known as an ultradian cycle. Okay, so your brain works in ultradian cycles, even when you're awake. So there's a famous researcher called Anders Ericsson, and he's worked with elite level musicians, chess grandmasters, elite athletes, and he's found that all of these guys, all these groups of people, tend to work in pulses of 90 minutes and then, have a 10-15 minute cognitive break, right? So that's really important. That's a lesson we can learn. Your stress levels are going to be highest in the morning, your cortisol. That's your physiology. Simple as that. Cortisol enables you to push through stress easier. So work with your physiology. Get up. Never mind all these morning rituals. I do this. Look, put it aside. It's that one thing, especially in college, that's grinding in the back of your head. I have to get that project finished. It's there. It's like, so lean into the day. Work in pulses of 90 minutes. 90 minutes, 15, 20 minute rest. 90 minutes, 15, 20 minutes rest. You are a lot less likely to burn out. You're going to be more proactive. You're going to be more productive. And it's going to give you lots of dopamine to push forward and get things complete. So that's how we work. Then the sleep. Should I nap? You're cramming, all right? It's your brain is like, it's like a laptop. It has a certain RAM, right? Short-term memory. So you can only push so much information in. And then what you have to do is to retain it, you have to sleep, and then it moves it into another part of the brain. Neuroplasticity happens and you learn. That's the key, right? And then you're able to take more on. So I would say to you, prioritize sleep to retain the information. It's better than cramming. You're going to retain it much better if you prioritize the sleep. And you can do the polyphasal sleep. You can plan your sleep in bouts of 3 hours, 4.5 hours, and wake yourself at those time frames if you're a bit all over the place. And that will help you.
And are you saying kind of 3.5 hours, that kind of the minimum that you'd want, like an hour, 2 hour nap it's not going to do it?
I'm saying that, like, if all else fails, if you're in chaos, some people use that, but like 7.5 hours, 5 cycles a night is what you should be getting. That's what you should be getting. So if you can't, if you're outside of that model, you can use the naps. If you're getting 6 hours, or if you're getting 4.5 hours, maybe during the day, you can see a window of 90 minutes, and that's when you can utilize that. So like, it all counts, all the sleep you get over 24 hours, and then you're analyzing a week. I would analyze, and it goes against scientific advice, really. Like, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. Maybe you can't do that. Like, life happens, stress, trauma, it's disruptive. Learn how to switch off.
Yeah, I suppose I would have always thought a nap would be a bad thing. I'm a fan of one during the day, but I always kind of wake up not feeling rested, I suppose, after about an hour or so. So do I need to drag it out a bit?
You need to do two things. You need to look at the duration. NASA have researched this. 26 minutes is apparently the absolute sweet spot. So you need to not go over 30 minutes. If you do, then you do a full 90 minutes. So you either go 15, 20 minutes. We've all done that nap of like an hour or 45 minutes, and you wake up feeling like somebody drugged you, right? You're like, oh my God, that was a terrible idea. I feel horrible. So again, it's working with the physiology. So either a short nap or a full 90-minute nap, and you'll feel much better. After waking, get light. Light will activate you. Yeah, so lots of light when you want to be active.
And in terms of like getting this quality sleep, as you said, not having that mental fatigue, what are the improvements and the differences people will say as a result of this?
So, I mean, look, learning how to de-escalate, decompress from the day, and letting go of the day, even falling asleep, is really important. If you go to bed exhausted, wrecked, wired and tired, you'll probably wake up 4 or 5 hours later, scattered all over the place. If you're not getting the sleep duration, lighter sleep in the second half of the night is when your brain cleans itself, is when the neuroplasticity happens, it's when the emotional regulation happens, it's when all that psychological stuff is happening. So you're going to feel much better. Physically, your hormones are going to be in a better place. Muscle tissue repair, 75% of that happens when you sleep. Inflammation, immune system, all of that is happening. And all the psychological repair, the lymphatic drainage, the cleaning of the brain. So essentially, there isn't an aspect of your health or your performance that isn't impacted. And then, your relationships, how well you work, all of that is impacted. So I would say to you, like, if it is the ultimate act of self-care, really, sleep.
So really, I suppose if you want to achieve peak performance, it can't be done without that regular sleep.
Yeah, I mean, that's why these athletes would get me in, and that's why I've worked with every type of sport, from badminton to MMA to golf to everything, because these guys realise actually there's nothing better. If I want to enhance my recovery and like accelerate my recovery and improve my, which all of that gets them ready for peak performance. Like performance is dependent upon recovery. It's as simple as that. So they want to be stepping onto the playing field with everything at 100%, really ideally. And they understand that sleep is, there's nothing more powerful than that.
And for you personally, have you got kind of a favorite project that you've had in terms of the most successful case?
I'd say the one that gave me maybe the most satisfaction was like this kind of older farmer guy from Cork who slept for 1 or 2 hours a night for 20 or 30 years, and he was just in bits, the poor fella. And like I worked with him for a few weeks, and it transformed his sleep, and it transformed his life. Like he was close to tears, like he couldn't believe it, like, you know. So like that was like, I can tell you about all the companies, I can tell you about all the celebrities that I've worked with. I can't, but that one gave me an incredible amount of satisfaction because it improved his life, his quality of life, and he was just beaming. He was so happy. He was thrilled. So
and would you take on many kind of personal projects like that, or is it more so it's getting towards athletes?
It's very pick and choose. Like I just don't have the time, and you know, people will write to me, and this is my experience. They'll write to me and beg me, and then I'll start to put it back on them. I'd ask them a lot of questions, and then I won't hear from them, or they don't want to, you know, commit to a 6-week program. They want like a tablet or you know, a 2-week or 2-day program. To, you know, if I work with you, I work with you for 12 weeks, kind of thing. So I don't work with very many now. I do have a few kind of high level athletes, and I do a lot of corporate work, and I do a lot of speaking, which I enjoy thoroughly. I enjoy that very much.
It's very interesting, I have to say. Yeah, I suppose that kind of 5-7 days, that wouldn't really do it. Then would you say you want, say, 2-3 weeks of data to collect on it, or
I'm trying to compress my 10 years experience into an hour for people, you know, 45 minutes, you know, and like really, there's about 20 different physical levers mechanistically that will improve your sleep. And over the, like if I do I have a 12-week program online that people can do, and then they have something to follow. It's a framework, and at the end of it, at least then they have confidence that, okay, if I do this, this, and this, I know I can get my sleep sorted. Yeah. Whereas like before, some people are all over the place with sleep. They're absolutely like, and they don't know. They're just like lost. I've tried magnesium. I've tried this. I've tried that. You know, I just can't switch my head off, and I'm stressed. And you know, but at least if they follow a format, it really gives them confidence and belief, and their sleep comes right.
And you spoke about nutrition in the past. Now that was a big part of your career. How would you incorporate kind of when you eat with sleep and stuff like that? I know me, I work kind of late into the night with part-time work and stuff like that, so it's hard to find the time to, you know, eat 6 o'clock for dinner or whatever. Yeah.
So nutrition plays a key role. Certain foods will help sleep. Certain foods will impair sleep. Certain foods have a clinical dose of melatonin. So things like cherries, pistachio nuts have other foods also have melatonin in them, the sleep hormone. When you eat is important. The digestive system, when you sleep, certain bacteria die away, other bacteria multiply and clean up your gut and your while you sleep, so you're able to absorb and utilize vitamins and minerals much better. So I mean, they're all linked together. You think about recovery, muscle mass. You know, if you can put amino acids in your bloodstream the same time as growth hormones are being secreted, that will accelerate growth and muscle and tissue repair. So food is important. When we eat, it activates the parasympathetic system, the rest and digest. Yeah, so we all feel lovely and fuzzy, and it feels good to eat, right? Now, look, the expert advice is leave a couple of hours between your last meal and bedtime. But like, life happens, and you could be training late, you could be working late, you know. So as long as you're not slinging a curry cheese chips in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, I would say, but be gentle with your digestive system. Don't try not to put it under pressure. But like, we have to eat too. We have to live life too.
Would you have like a specific time that you'd want to eat before you sleep?
Yeah, and like ideally your main carbohydrate meal. So some people have that at lunchtime. I'd advise have that in the evening. So if I'm going to bed at say 10, 11, I'm having my main meal in the evening at 6 to 7, and I'm putting a lot of carbohydrate in. With carbohydrate, I have a lot of tryptophan. Tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. So it's going to help me sleep. If I have, and that's what the research says. If we have food later in the day, it will actually help us sleep, and leave that, you know, 2 to 3 hour period, to give yourself a chance. You don't want to put a lot of work onto your digestive system as you go down to sleep.
So just, I suppose, as a final word then about the technology you spoke about earlier in terms of mental fatigue. I know it's not publicly available, but where do you see that going in the future? Do you think it's something that people should adopt and should be made public, or do you think the kind of invasive lack of privacy there might be an issue?
Well, I feel as though we have to maybe redress our relationship with technology, because technology is impairing people's ability to sleep and let go of the day. We're all so busy and stressed. Everyone is so busy now, and they need some me time, and they're seeking that through scrolling. And the scrolling is like gambling to the brain. It's highly addictive, right? It's chemically the same as gambling. That's why it's so addictive. Whereas we can use technology in a very positive way to help build a bridge to sleep. So we can listening to this podcast or my podcast, right? It's much better. Then the brainwave signature can change from alpha to theta and we can fall asleep. But if there's visual stimuli, we won't. Now, in terms of using technologies, I think it's very interesting where that is going. And if we can get that relationship right, we can even do other things like, maybe manipulate our brainwave signatures to induce sleep. And that's what people like the US military are attempting to do.
Well, I think that would be very interesting if they ever do get that to happen. So thank you very much for coming on, Tom. Obviously you've heard now, lads, 26 minutes to 90 minutes, one or the other. That's your ideal nap, and 7.5 hours 5 times a week. Thank you, Tom. It's been
my
a pleasure.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Cheers.